Welcome to Vibrant Numerals. In this video, which could end up being a long and a short or a series of videos, I'm going to talk about the astrology and the numerology of Juneteenth, in particular this Juneteenth 2025. I'm Elizabeth, and I help spiritual practitioners and number enthusiasts apply numerology to their practice and to their everyday life. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and share. So when we are doing any kind of numerology, and same with astrology, um, you need to have at least a birth date, if not a location of where you were born, as well as a time of birth. And so for the birth of this nation, I guess we'll call it the African American nation, that was born on Juneteenth. We use June 19th, 1865. And so I would first invite everybody to go and do some additional research to really understand the origins of Juneteenth and the importance of Juneteenth. I know that there were many historical events that led up to this date of June 19th, and also there were historical events that came after this date of June 19th, 1867. And there is some discrepancies about when the African people within the United States that were enslaved were actually freed. Um, and so that could change this birth date. But we're using June 19th, 1865 for a couple of different reasons. One, this is the date that was used to first commemorate Juneteenth, to honor the history and to celebrate this moment of liberation. It also is what is used in, like you can see on the Juneteenth flag, that's the date that is used when it's any of the flyers or anything that are used for Juneteenth celebrations. This is the date that's used. And also, this is the date that was used to acknowledge Juneteenth as a national federal holiday. That happened in 2021, but this is the date that was used to commemorate that time. So we have all of this documentation, but also just within this collective of people, this is the date that we honor. This is the date that is tied to that vibration of this moment in time, this birthing of this nation. And so then that's why we use this date. So we're first going to look at the astrological natal or birth chart of this nation. And I will leave all of the really deep details of this chart and what all of the planet placements and aspects mean to our expert astrologers. Please do add any of your expertise to the comments. I'd really appreciate to see it. I just want to point out a few things that I look at when I'm doing the numerology to be able to look for consistencies in the vibrational pattern and to tie the astrology with the numerology so I can even dive deeper, because the numerology really is to help get to a deeper level of what we're getting with astrology. And we already get so much with astrology. But there's a few things that I like to look at to really understand what the vibrations are doing. And one of those is Pluto, because it's this vibration and energy of like transformation, and it's on a larger generational level. And so it's a vibration that resonates very strongly. You can see it impacting other vibrations. when it's included. And so I look at Pluto, and for this nation, Pluto is in the fifth house along with Venus and the moon. And so this is letting us know that the transformation that the African American nation is bringing into the world is closely tied to creativity and the expression of beauty. Um, and even within there, it's in like there's lots of emotions in everything that's done. But that emotional state is supported by the energy of mother. And so we see a energy of mother very much so when we're thinking about the transformation, not only within the nation, but what ripples out to all collectives from this nation. And it's interesting to think about how creativity and the expression of beauty really go hand in hand here, where these energies are conjunct, they're working together. And so being able to openly express the definition of beauty, so you see it in the fashion and in the art, and then having it in this house of creativity, and it's creativity that is meant to be shared. So you hear it in the music, you see it in the art, you see it in the fashion, and this is why also others cling to it so much, because it has that very powerful energy of Pluto transformation, and the nurturing of the mother tied in there. So the all of this creativity, that's the expression of beauty that is coming out of the African American nation, very much um, feels nurturing, and it's powerfully transformative. Um, and that's why it's easily have others be drawn into that. Um, Also, I look at Chiron, which here is in Pisces. And so, just to give you an idea, like there's the surface level vibrations that are then tied to these deeper vibrations. And so, we probably should start with the ascendant or the rising sign, because that's the vibration, kind of like the life path number that you are originally presented with when you encounter this African American nation. And so this ascendant or rising sign is in Capricorn. And so the first impression, and this could be the first impression, but also the giving off of a wrong impression, or people getting the wrong idea about what this vibration actually is because it's surface level. It's really giving a lot of energy around money and being work focused, which is that Capricorn. And it, because it's in that first house, because it's the rising, it seems like this is the bulk of the identity, is around money and being flashy with the money, but then tying that with that expression of beauty. So it's the expression of wealth, which looks beautiful. And that would make sense also, because that Pluto and the moon and Venus are over there in Taurus. Um, but because people get stuck on that surface level, they don't get to go deeper to really know that um, the African American nation really is extremely innovative. And I'm getting this from looking at the sun with Uranus in Gemini in the sixth house. So extremely innovative, yet unconventional, because that's that Uranus energy with the sun, and really prefers to be in like a lighthearted social communication kind of thing, and it being like smaller chunks where it's this sixth house of like daily routine, but also of being in service. So on the surface, the initial image is that this African American nation is very focused on money and um, work. But then that's also where some of the negative stigmas and stereotypes can come in also, because you're thinking that you are really hitting on the identity of the person, but you're really only on that surface level. And you'd really have to get down deeper to really be able to see and experience the innovation and the shine of that innovation, and being able to see how just on a regular daily basis is very unconventional, what would be considered untraditional, but it's our tradition, and um, very lighthearted and loving and of service, and wanting to be of service. But then that leads to these deeper pieces of like Chiron and the North Node, which are the life purpose, North Node, but then also the wound. And I think it's very interesting to look at what is the wound of this African American nation. And so for this birth chart, Chiron is sitting in the third house of communication, um, with Pisces, which is the house of uh, imagination and spirituality. And so this wound is really hidden within the communication because we have so much going on in Gemini, which is usually the ruler of the third house. It's the wound is hidden within the communication. So you can see this in like some of the written words, some of the poetry, some of the stories told, some of the music, um, excuse me, where it's just a story being told, but it's very deep. And it's the story of the wounds and of the longing to be reconnected with ancestors. Um, and also the really wanting to be heard or feeling like not having a voice. But in those same wound sorrows is the path to healing. And so the healing of that wound can really come from spirituality, um, not religion, but spirituality. You can find spirituality within religion, but that spirituality and that imagination, um, not dissociation. So, not the separation of the mind from the body, because that's what you do when you're not healing the wound and you don't want to feel that pain. But the imagination of manifestation with vision and pulling it into the earth realm. And so that Chiron is very interestingly placed. And then we see that the North Node is one of the few, it's the North Node and like the Saturn that are really kind of anchoring this whole chart. But that North Node, that life purpose, is in Libra in the 10th house. So it's really related to justice, but in the career space, which is interesting because we have the rising in Capricorn. So that adds to that original surface image of thinking that we're all about work, but that's not what the purpose of the African American nation is. It really is the work that we are meant to do is all about bringing justice and fairness into these external outside spaces. And again, please, expert astrologers, give me more. But these are what I'm seeing, the vibrations I'm picking up. And it's also interesting that we up there up top, we do have Saturn sitting up there in Libra also. So Saturn, that structure, that father energy, is supporting um, that life purpose. And wanting to have that feeling of fairness and justice for the African American nation. So those are the vibrations that I really look at, um, either with or before I'm really digging deep into the numerology. We are able to get a life path number for this African American nation. And using the date June 19th, 1865, we get the life path number of 45, which starts the first step is change. And it's not necessarily just bringing change. Like, it is bringing change, it is changing internally, but it's also the awareness of change, where um, the African American nation has a unique perspective in being able to easily identify where change needs to happen. And that makes this life path number very aligned and a very in tune with that, because the first step of walking on this life path is identifying where change needs to happen and recognizing not only our role in the change, but the role of others, and understanding where we are unable to make the change fully and where we can only do our part. But once we are clear about what we see around change, about what needs to be changed, and do our part in creating that change, then we get to this place of foundation. And this again is not just um, building new foundations out of the change, even though that is a big part of it. It also is the examination of foundations, the foundations of beliefs and mindsets, of systems, um, of the nation itself, and those around the nation and that interact with the nation. What are the foundations? And which of these foundations are faulty and do need to have a complete change, and which can be patched up, and which need to be brand new, and which need to be built up. Um, but all of that, both the change and the identification and working with um, these foundations, is for the purpose of ending cycles. So really, this nation was born to be able to end cycles. So right before um, you get to 9, you have an 8, where 8 is infinitely cycling energy. So it's these cycles that um, you've already seen because you're past the 8 energy, and now you're at the 9, where you are recognizing which cycles need to end. And an ending is not always that they're completely gone, because the the example that's coming to mind is giving me the giggles, but like, the end of pregnancy is not the end of that whole cycle. It's the end of the pregnancy cycle, but it's the birth of the child. And that's the example that is coming to mind, that um, with every ending there is a beginning, and it could be the same cycle but just done differently. Like, that could be tied in with the change. Um, but there's this big ending of cycles. It's the movement of energy. It's the breaking of the bonds of that infinitely cycling energy and moving it into a different space. And this is highly tied to that natal moon phase. So the natal moon phase for the African American nation is balsamic moon, I believe. If I'm wrong, please tell me. Um, but that balsamic moon, it's pretty interesting because it's the darkest moon along with the new moon. And it really signifies these deep rooted need for healing. And anyone that is born, or in this case, this nation that is born under this balsamic moon, is really meant to come into this world to break karmic cycles, um, to clear out these cycles and these energetic blockages for themselves, for generations past, so for ancestors, and for generations going forward. Um, so I think this 45/9 is very fitting. There also is, from the book that I use, that's called, oh my gosh, Numerology and the Divine Triangle. I just forgot there for a minute. They have some information on 45, this 45 life path number as well, that I thought would be significant to share with you. And I think the ones that are most important are in bold here. So, not satisfied with that worldly success alone. So, similar to like what we were seeing where Capricorn was coming in as that first vibration with the rising, but there was so much more beneath it. So this is saying pretty much the same thing, that it could seem like worldly success would be enough to be satisfied, but that's not nearly enough. Yes, it's part of it, but it's not nearly enough alone. And then we also get um, this transformation through like this nurturing, mothering energy again, where 45 is associated with sympathizing with those that are more unfortunate or marginalized or oppressed, and being able to take on their heartaches. Um, when we take on energy into our heart, that's where energy can be processed and healed. Um, so when you process your emotions in your heart space, you are healing those emotions. Um, and I think the last one is pretty big too, because it's really about not just being able to teach, but wanting to teach and serve. And that goes back to that sixth house of really on a regular basis wanting to teach and serve, and working with groups and organizations is just very fulfilling. But the way that the African American teaches is through um, our own experiences. So I tell my children all the time, and really anybody that listens, that you learn either from mentors or from mistakes. So this African American nation is the mentors really for everybody. Um, And that also makes it harder where we have the experiences to be able to heal ourselves and teach others to heal. But we still feel like, because of that wound of Chiron, that we don't have that voice in order to be able to do that. Um, the other thing that is a wanted to make sure to include is this picture of the tarot card Five of Cups, because the 45 is associated with the Five of Cups tarot card. And this tarot card is, I think, extremely relevant for this vibration, because you see here that the person is stuck on looking at what was lost, stuck at looking at the past and what is already gone. And so the change that needs to happen is for us to turn around and be able to see that we have what we need to start a new foundation to end our cycle. So by turning around, now that energy is moving in a different direction, we can see we actually have two cups that are full and ready for us to use. And and expand outward. Um, but that change needs to happen first. Also, the 45 is associated with the first decan of Scorpio. And Scorpio is those deep, deep emotions. So that's also where a lot of that emotional expression through expressing beauty and that creativity and that imagination, that's where that comes out. Where it's like, man, where did all of this really deep information and deep talk come from? Well, it's from our experiences of our ancestors, and we're able to pull it from this very deep Scorpio space. So we're also able to construct this divine triangle for the African American nation, remembering that there's this is the life cycle, um, because this is not a person, but is a nation that just builds and doesn't necessarily die. Um, we can continue around this, but every time we pass that 81 years, it's a rebirth. So it's stepping into a new identity. So I don't know about you, but I know for myself that when I think about just even this lifetime, I am like, woof, I've lived lots of lives. I've, done lots of things. I've worked lots of jobs. I've lived lots of places. Like it's like I have multiple lives in one life. And that's what this kind of is. It's like you're still yourself, but you're stepping into a new form of that identity. And so in this youth time, is when you're really learning and building up that identity. And then when you are in power, that is when you are building a power behind that identity and in the expression of that identity. And then in wisdom is now where you're able to take your lived experiences and the power, because your lived experiences is really youth. And then the power you've gained from those lived experiences, um, into being able to be this wise soul. Now, any of the lessons that we do not learn in the previous squares, you re-encounter in all three, and you still have to deal with them from going from youth power to wisdom. So if we are age-wise in wisdom, but we have a lesson that we have not learned from the youth square, when we encounter it, that's when we say, oh, it's that inner child. Because you are coming at it, and this is when we could potentially behave as, and it looks like it's immature, it doesn't match our age. And that's because we're dealing with these lessons of youth. Um, so the African American nation is currently in this, it's in the last leg of wisdom, the second time around. So we're coming up on, I think it's in, let me see, 20, yes, 2027 is when the African American nation will have like this rebirth and step into a new identity. And so I've constructed this divine triangle. It's a big, huge spreadsheet of all these numbers, which I love, but most people would probably look at in horror. um, but what I've done is I've focused in on just a few key places so that we can see some of the patternings that are happening here. So when you construct this divine triangle, you get key points in the life cycle, and those are like major milestones, usually of some kind of transformation or big life event that highly impacts this life cycle, and in particular that part of life. Um, and so for this African American nation, we're seeing this mirror pattern several times. This is just an example of it, where we have these two major events that happened in 1937 and in let's see, 1937, and then again in 1930, oh no, 1944. But they're different vibrations, but then you see it mirrored here. So in 1937, at the age of 72, it was some big learning experience. And this is when I need my historians to come in and give me some more information about these dates, because these are the dates I'm getting with numerology, but I need to dig in more to really understand what was happening. So 1937 is when there was some big kind of learning experience. Um, and it was around that life path number of 45. Excuse me. And then we see this again in, oh man, I can't even read this very well, but I think it is 1944. Yes, 1944, where it's now a turning point, because this is the vibration of 20. So we have this, oh no, it is 1938. So we're going from a learning experience down to a turning point from 1937 to 1938, or 9. And then that is mirrored in 1944 to 1946, but it's the mirror image. So we're starting at a turning point and then going to a learning experience. And the only thing I could really think of for the second one was like the turning point. 1944 was when all the black soldiers were in World War II, and they were seeing the difference in their treatment in Europe, and then came back home and were treated worse than they were on the battlefield. Um, and that was that 1944 to 1946. So like the turning point, a point of awareness is the 20, is the lower point, and then a learning experience is the higher point. So I'm going to dig in some more, because that's an interesting pattern, and we're seeing another interesting pattern actually coming up here that we're in right now, where this one again is this interesting mirror image, but this one we all should be aware of, because this one starts in 2018. So 2018, 2019, and 2020. And I saw this and I had to walk away, because I was like, no, there's no way. There's no way. And even knowing that this is accurate and that I see and feel these vibrations accurately, um, it still always amazes me at the synchronicity. So from 2018, in 2018, there was a learning experience that the African American nation was experiencing. But the difference between this and what we're seeing above is then we have this peak, where this peak in 2019, it's a birth. It's like a birth of like a dawning of, and like an opening of the eyes of clarity. It's like a awakening of like, wow, no way. And so thinking about the events that began in right before 2018, and I can't get too much into detail because it makes me very emotional, but in 2018, and really having those learning experiences about I guess I could say just how unloved and neglected the African American nation had been, and the brutality that was felt and being experienced for its entire lifetime, and having some of that culminate in 2019, and the clarity of we really don't have to be going through this, and there are others that um, could be or should be supporting us. And then going to 2020, where now this is a turning point. It's a turning point of awareness. In contrast, I'm going to shift, but in contrast, in the mirror image now is what is starting right now. Actually today, because I am recording this on June 19th, 2025, and that's when your vibrational energy changes, is on your birthday. And so right now in 2025 is another turning point. It's a mirror image turning point, though, from 2020. So it's it's a turning point. It's a changing of awareness. So like we were seeing in the tarot card, it's a turning around, um, not looking at the 2020 or that past anymore, and turning around and getting a new perspective, a new awareness. And I do think that the African American nation is getting that right now. It is a new, like, circumstances are not different, um, but the perspective and the level of awareness is different, is what we're witnessing. And so then what we should expect to see is now into 2026. So this time next year in 2026, we should start beginning to see, because these vibrations last for the whole year. So we're just starting this 2025 energy of turning point, a shift in awareness, to now in 2026. So then in 2026, in a year from now, we should be seeing a birthing or a level of clarity change, from this new perspective. Um, Revolution is very open. I'll just say that. Open to clarity. Um, but then that leads with that clarity. So now it's awareness and clarity, and that leads into these learning experiences in 2027, which is also very pivotal, because at the same moment that we're going into learning experiences, or this African American nation is going into this learning experiences vibration, that vibration of 45, which is very significant because it's the life path number. The nation is also stepping out of that wisdom square and stepping into the youth square again to find its new identity. Very interesting. So I'm going to dig into these more. If anybody has um, some videos or some important information that they could add to these dates, please, please do. So I just wanted to show that with this divine triangle, we can also combine these vibrations with other nations or other people. So we could have two individuals on one chart to be able to see what their vibrations are doing together. What does that look like? And so here we've added some of these vibrations of the United States nation, of so born July 4th, 1776. And so I just wanted you to be able to see that we can look at these vibrational patterns and like when they're happening and understand that we could be seeing some different things. So actually right now, if we look just at the far, all the way to the far right, where we are looking at this 2025, 2026, and 2027. So you step into your energy for the year on your birthday. So the African American nation is stepping into 2025 energy right now. But the United States will not be stepping into that 2025 energy until next month, July 4th, on its birthday. So just giving you that kind of clarity to make sure you understand the timing. But we have this arc that's happening from 2025 to 2027 for the African American nation, but the United States nation also has this one point in 2026. And so 2026 could be an impactful year for both nations. And especially because they are coinciding in an interesting way where the African American nation is in the vibration of 55, while the USA nation is in a vibration of 47. And so the contrasting and the working together or being butting heads with those vibrations will I'll dig into that a little bit more and give you some more information. But you can see that it happened differently earlier on this same chart. So when we are looking at that 2018 to 2020, it wasn't until 2021 that the USA nation was having this same vibration. And so because the African American nation resides within the USA nation is like a parent to the African American nation. The African American nation is really experiencing both of these vibrations. But that's also where the experiences of these different nations can be very different. So those that are only in the USA nation would only be feeling the blue, while those that are in the African American nation would be feeling both the red and the blue and the contrasting between it. Thank you for joining me. That was a lot of fun. I am getting more into this and looking at this, so maybe at some point we can do some lives or some longer videos of really digging into using the divine triangle, but also looking at all of these vibrations together and how they coincide and are really creating a weaving or a tapestry. Thank you for joining me. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and share, and hit that notification bell so you can get my next video. Thanks. Bye.